Hello and welcome to the Michigan and Trumbull podcast. I'm Alex Freeman, joined as always by Mr. October himself, Luke Jaconis. October ready in the D. Luke, when did that shirt arrive for you for this October playoff campaign?
We are recording on Wednesday, October 16th in the afternoon. The shirt arrived Tuesday evening on October 15th. I placed the order, I want to say, on September 26th or 7th. I will put it this way. I was in Florence, Italy at the airport flying back to America when I placed this shirt early Saturday morning. So almost 3 weeks later, the shirt has arrived. And it's a great shirt, great fit, feels good. I have to give, I'm pissed at MLB Shopping Fanatics, I am. But I have to give them just a little bit of grace because there was a major hurricane that made landfall in Southwest Florida throughout the
That is
last
fair.
3 weeks. However, once I ordered it, I immediately looked at the tracking because I was like, what if I order this shirt and they get bounced in 2 games against the Astros and it's not even here in time? That's kind of a bummer. Even before the hurricane hit, it had its expected delivery not until October 16th through the 20th. So I could have been waiting another 5 days potentially to get this bad boy. And as we all know now, the Detroit Tigers are no longer in the playoffs. But this shirt will be a great commemorative piece of swag to wear that will always remember the 2024 season of the Gritty Tigers. Don't let the Tigers get hot. And they let them get hot. And now America knows.
They let them get hot. They
Let
them
them get hot.
get hot, and that was the
Yes, they
mistake.
did.
Luke, thank you for that timestamp. Appreciate it. So as we do it, the Tigers have been bounced from the postseason against the Guardians after literally one bad pitch from Skubal. Two, I guess, but really one bad pitch because walking Jose Ramirez is not ever actually a problem in my book. Even though it loaded the bases. But yeah, it was a bummer of a way to lose. So let's get that out of the way first so that then we can properly celebrate this campaign as we go. So Luke, your thoughts on the Guardians series.
Overall, I don't think the Tigers deserve to win that series. I don't, as much as it pains me to say it. I think the minute they let that Game 4 slip away at home, I didn't want to be the party pooper. I know they had such a magical run for 2 months straight, but I just had a pit feeling in my stomach. I was like, I know you're going back to Cleveland. It's Game 5. You feel great because you got Skubal on the mound, but I just had a pit feeling, in my tummy, and it wasn't great. Here's the thing about that Game 5 in particular. I don't blame Tarik Skubal took the loss on paper. I don't blame that loss on Tarik Skubal. He threw the pitch that went out by Lane Thomas. The Tigers' offense was pretty bad. I'm going to use the word awful in the Guardians series. Yeah, they had some big timely hits. Kerry Carpenter obviously had his postseason moment with the big 3-run jack over Clase in Game 2 in Cleveland. That was awesome. That was legendary. Outside of that, there really wasn't much else to write home about in terms of offense in the ALDS for the Detroit Tigers. There were guys who definitely stepped up and carried their own weight. Parker Meadows had a fantastic postseason. Jake Rogers had a pretty damn good postseason. Obviously, Ibanez and Kerry Carpenter probably had the 2 biggest hits in the postseason. Riley Green was fine, but then guys like Colt Keith, guys like Matt Vierling, guys like Spencer Torkelson, the Trey Sweeneys, they really didn't come through. I mean, they really didn't. And I'm not trying to say that it's all on them because even though they had bad postseasons, it wasn't. There was times that even some of the guys who had good postseasons, when they had high leverage situations, they didn't come through. They just didn't hit with runners in scoring position. Justin Henry Malloy, shout out to him, great postseason. So what I noticed with the Tigers' offense in the ALDS, almost let's look at it like a dinner party. Great appetizers. The entree was terrible. They were getting guys on base. We were getting ready to feast, and they just couldn't give us good filet mignon. Instead, they gave us cold chicken nuggets. And it is what it is. So I'm immensely proud of this team. It sucks to lose to Cleveland because Cleveland is my least favorite team in all of baseball. Followed in a very close second by the New York Yankees. So this is going to be a potentially horrific World Series for your guy here because I'm also not a Dodgers fan. And as much as I'm rooting for the Mets, I love to watch the Mets lose because of Frank the Tank Fleming.
Yep.
His post games just give me life. They really do. So I'm rooting for the Mets this go around, but kind of, I guess, begrudgingly. Great season overall, though. Postseason, got to be proud of these guys. Just getting into the playoffs, what they did against Houston, and then taking it to 5 games against a very good Cleveland Guardians team. I'll take it. AJ Hinch, I think, managed it pretty damn flawlessly for the most part. Pitching was pretty much there for the most part. Offense was very sporadic. Got through the wild card round, just wasn't enough for the ALDS. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think to me, the kind of summation of the ALDS is that this is still a roster of guys learning to win, not a roster of guys who know how to win. And that's okay. There was one guy on the postseason roster with postseason experience at the start of this thing. So it is a bummer. I was sad on Sunday until my Detroit Lions made everybody feel better by absolutely annihilating the Dallas Cowboys.
They did America a favor.
And, but when I think about it also, like, they weren't really supposed to be here yet. Fighting for 500, which before the season we thought was going to be good enough to win the Central, not even close to good enough to win the Central. And so that they were able to get this postseason experience, kind of what feels like maybe a year ahead of schedule, is itself an exciting thing, and something that is like ultimately good for the development as we head into the postseason. That now we have this roster of young guys who have competitive, on the road, high leverage situation playoff experience. It didn't always go the way we wanted it to go, but that's okay because they learned from the experience, right? That, okay, this is what it feels like to step up in a game 4, down 2 runs with runners on base. How do I adjust my hitting to get the guy in? Those are important lessons for them to learn. So ultimately, that is great, and that's kind of my biggest takeaway from the postseason here, is that, like, there is a very, very bright future for much of this roster. And I will be very interested and excited to see what Scott Harris does in the offseason to supplement this roster and take advantage of what appears to be now a wide open window for contention.
Yeah, I agree. The window is open now. That's a phrase we hear a lot in sports. The championship window and the winning window, it's open now in Detroit, which is great. You win. I think it was, what did it end up being, 86 and 76. They went when it's all said and done. That's a heck of a record, and they had a good season. You're right though, and we don't have to get fully into this today, but maybe a little. This is, and we said this kind of in our last episode, this is not a polished, perfect, and ready team, clearly. So there are moves that have to be made this offseason. There are people you need to bring in. I mean, obviously the big thing first is, let's just get it out of the way, is what's happening with Spencer Torkelson. Is he the first baseman of the future, or is it time to look for other options? I personally am on the latter side of things. I think it's time to look for other options. He's had 3 full seasons in the major leagues. He's shown sparks at times, but overall not consistent enough to be in the everyday lineup. If you want to bring in someone for him to battle it out with spring training, I'm okay with that. But if we're going into Lakeland next February with Spencer Torkelson penciled in as the starting first baseman on opening day, we've got big problems, in my opinion.
Yeah, on that topic, Luke, yeah. I would agree completely, and I think that there seem to be two schools of thought that I'm okay with Scott Harris going either way, which is we need a big bat at one of the corners. And whether or not that's a big bat third baseman or they're, the Pete Alonso big bat first baseman, either is fine with me. But if we go big bat third baseman, we need above replacement first baseman on the other corner to at least be competitive. And there are some guys in the free agent list that are in that age 36, 37, category where it is going to be a 1 to 2 year guy to kind of finish out his career that is an above replacement first baseman, and I think that's maybe somebody that you bring in to get some of that more veteran leadership on the team as well.
That's the thing too, and that's going to be a really intriguing story to watch throughout the course of this offseason is where do they go? Because I agree. I mean, if anyone's thinking they're just going to dump a buttload of money at third base and first base, also bringing in a couple of big starting pitchers and a reliever, I think you're crazy. I think you maybe get one big contract this offseason, maybe. That's the one thing we've yet to see Scott Harris do during his presidency. And that's where sometimes I've taken issue with him. I get it. Baseball isn't just about throwing money at guys and they automatically produce. Javier Baez is a great example.
Look at the Final Four in Major League Baseball right now. Kind of seems
true.
like it's about throwing money and getting the production.
That's true. I guess I should rephrase that and say, if you're the Detroit Tigers, you can't just throw money at a guy and expect him to do well, because look at who's your shortstop right now, which we need to get to him in a second too. But I do think that the third base, first base, they could go big like with maybe a Willy Adames type guy. First base, I think there's a couple of more options. Obviously, the golden goose right now is a Pete Alonso. I think, though, with the Mets only making this run deeper and deeper, I feel like the writing is on the wall that he's going to be a forever Met, but we'll see what happens. You could go for a couple guys, though, like you said, maybe more those mid to kind of late 30s, maybe at the twilight of their career, only a few more years on the books, like a Christian Walker, a Ryan Mountcastle. You could maybe go like a Paul Goldschmidt. I don't know if they want to go down that road because he's getting up there in age. But, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. I think, I think we are going to see one big free agent contract, maybe something like a 3-year deal, maybe in the ballpark of like 50 to 65 million. And that's going to be like the Tigers' big purchase this offseason. And then I think you're also looking at getting another bona fide starter. Right now, what Detroit has going for them in terms of pitching, there are a lot of guys on this active roster and even on the 40-man, some guys battling injuries that I'm intrigued with. I mean, you've got Skubal, you've got Montero, you've got Brant Herter, you've got Reese Olson, you've got a Casey Mize, you've got a Matt Manning still lurking in AAA, you've got Sawyer Gipson-Long. There are Jackson Jobe, obviously, is probably penciled to be in next year's starting rotation. There's a lot of interesting arms. I do think, though, it wouldn't hurt to bring in a more veteran, not an innings eater. We don't need Jose Urena 2.0 or Can't Pitch Maeda 2.0. I think he's as good as gone. Do they bring back Jack Flaherty? Do they offer a kind of 1 year, sayonara deal to Justin Verlander? I don't know, but I think you're going to see something semi-big as well with a starting pitching splash. And then you may see kind of a more like Michael Lorenzen, Matthew Boyd type deal. And then I think you get almost like another type of serviceable reliever as well along the way. So it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see like 5 moves. 3.5 of those moves will be like, all right, yeah, that's a fine move, whatever. And then half of that we're going to be like, oh, this is pretty intriguing. And then the last one is going to be like, this is our big splash of the offseason. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
This is the win now signal.
Right. Agreed. And I almost I'm intrigued, to see how they'll handle it. But of course, Scott Harris in his kind of end of the season press conference with AJ Hinch was very clear, like, we're not just going to throw money, because money doesn't just automatically buy you wins. And to your point, Scott, I'd say we'll take a look at the New York Yankees and even the Cleveland Guardians have got a Jose Ramirez, the Mets, the Dodgers. It definitely don't hurt, buddy. Definitely don't hurt. So, Chris, you're probably not watching at this point because I've lambasted you too much over the past few seasons. But if you are by any chance still sticking around, or if you ever were in the first place, we know you weren't. He's making pizzas. Spend some money, please. It'd be great.
Busy in the kitchen. He's busy.
He's busy in the kitchen. He's
making those hot and ready.
He's tossing that dough. I mean, this team, these fans are ready. I mean, they have been starving for postseason baseball, and even with the nice little appetizer that we got this season, people were excited and then some. So it'll be interesting to see. What do you think happens now? I'm going to pose this question to you. What are we doing at shortstop?
Javi's here to stay. I think that Scott didn't say those words explicitly in the press conference, but I do think when asked about Javi, the way in which he answered the question was that they're not going to just eat that money. Now, I do think it is absolutely in a place where Javi does not have to be a starter on this team. um, where he had the hip surgery. He's been recovering. It does seem like perhaps he can rotate better than he was able to rotate in the past during his time with the organization. And so there is some hope for that, but I do think Javier Baez will be a Detroit Tiger as we enter spring training, and I think he will be on the 40-man roster throughout the next season at least.
Do you think there is a world where I agree? I think he's definitely gonna. If you want to see some Tiger spring training baseball next year, starring Javier Baez, I think you'll be able to see it. Do you think there is a world where they cut him right at the end of camp, right before the season starts? 'Cause that's the one thing I've seen some people being like, they're going to bring in some people to compete with him, and they'll let Trey Sweeney, maybe a couple guys from the minors, maybe you bring in almost like a Gio or Shella type deal at the very end to kind of throw in to compete. I don't know, man. I agree with you. I don't think they're just like, all right, Javi, it's the off season. You suck. You haven't been good for 3 years. We're just eating the money. You can walk. I don't think that's going to happen as much as we all probably think it should. But I also have a hard time, too, just being like, well, we know he's not good, so we'll just make him the most highly paid utility player on the bench who plays maybe once or twice a week, and he's making more than all of the starters probably combined.
Than the entire postseason roster. So, yeah, I mean, I think that part of the equation there is that was Trey Sweeney lights out? Am I like, let's make Trey Sweeney the everyday shortstop? No, but in 2 seasons, is Trey Sweeney at a spot with that major league experience that he could be an above replacement everyday shortstop? Yes. So it's not like there isn't a roster configuration, and Javi is still a plus defender, defensive shortstop. So it's not like he's useless.
Right.
So I do think that there is a platoon option that kind of gets you through the rest of Javi's deal, with the upside that if Javi is healthier than he has been and is able to, now that he is healthier, return closer to the Javi Baez we all hoped we were signing. There's a lot of upside there that I don't think is hurting the roster configuration as much as other scenarios in the past have, i.e. the Prince Fielder contract and the
Jordan Zimmerman,
the end of Miggy's deal. Not that Miggy earned all that money, but like the number was hurting some of the desire to go out and spend. So I think that he's not hurting us in that way. Even with his deal, the payroll is still towards the bottom of the league, so there's plenty of room to spend.
I think there was one blurb or stat that I saw that on the Tigers playoff roster, the top 3 highest paid players in the organization weren't even on the playoff roster. That being, I think it was Miggy, Javi, and Kenta Maeda, if I'm not mistaken, were the 3. So I was like, hilarious. Colt Keith was making the most on the active playoff roster, which was.
Can we talk about how Miguel Cabrera was still one of the highest paid Tigers?
Yeah. You know what? Say what you will. People might come at me for this, but in some of those high leverage situations, you know what may have helped the Detroit Tigers? One of those Miguel Cabrera little smack him to the right center side singles to drive in a run or 2. I mean, just saying. I know.
Well, and that's what
candy and nuts, but
that's what the entire lineup doesn't know how to do yet.
Yeah,
against Major League hitting, because all of these guys, when they were playing against college competition or their high school competition, they were the single best athlete, and they would just muscle the ball out of the park and they would win the game. But that's not something you can do against Major League pitching. And you can't even learn that against AAA pitching. So you just they had to figure out, oh, that's what they mean by just punch one to shallow right.
Yeah. I actually want to kind of in that vein, I want to give a shout out to 2 guys. And one of the guys was kind of, I guess, on our radar going into the season, but very fleeting, if that. And then one guy totally was off the radar for me. Wenzel Perez, I
Yeah.
don't know where his ceiling is with this team, but he has been such a pleasure to watch. And he had some, throughout this entire season, some pretty big hits and moments at times.
Hmm.
Defensively, I think maybe a little bit shaky. We saw that a couple times, especially there was that one ball in right field. But I mean, overall, I mean, I'll take him over Kerry Carpenter in the outfield any day of the week. But Wenzel Perez, I'm really excited to see kind of what his trajectory is with this team moving forward. And while I don't know what this guy's future with the team is, if any, you got to give some love to Zach McKinstry, who it seemed every day in the second half of the season, we were all like, well, surely this is the time where Zach McKinstry is no longer on the active roster. But he just kept avoiding death like a cat with 9 lives, just kept bouncing and bouncing, and then actually turned in a pretty decent little postseason performance. I mean, he had the home. If anyone picked Zach McKinstry to go deep in the playoffs before Riley Green or Spencer Torkelson, I think we all would have said you are crazy. But that's what happened. You know, McKinstry went deep; those guys didn't. It is what it is. So, yeah, it's just going to give them some love, and I think too. You know, kind of circling back quick to the Javi thing, it'll be interesting to see what happens. You know, to answer your point, you said is Trey Sweeney the guy a year or two from now? You got to keep in mind. I know we're not a minor league Tigers podcast,
Hmm.
but there's a guy coming up the ranks by the name of Kevin McGonigal who seems to be the real deal. So is Sweeney kind of a placeholder for a little bit? Who knows? I'm all for, though, as it stands right now, as we approach going into the 25 season, let Trey Sweeney run with the ball at shortstop. If he absolutely starts to kind of stumble and fall, then make some decisions. But I'd say for me, if I was setting the opening day roster for 25, Sweeney's my starting shortstop. And then probably backing him up, I got, the McKinstries. I don't really need to see any more of Ryan Kreidler with all due respect. I don't need to see any more of Javi Baez with all due respect.
Yeah, because I mean,
that's
like you
kind of
look
that's
at
where I'm
like
at.
your worst case scenario, with Trey Sweeney being your starting shortstop, with Javi Baez being the platoon with him in that spot, is that both of them are hot at the start of the year.
Mhm.
Like, and if they're like they were this year, then you're right where you were. And so if they both get hot, now suddenly we have a lot of options at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Um, and great, we can continue to compile without having to rob the farm system to bring in pieces.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. Speaking of bringing in pieces, bringing in players, one thing the Tigers have going for them, and actually they've got a lot of things going for them going into this offseason. They had a great season. They should be proud. But for the first time in what feels like a long time, they're not going into a postseason, or I'm sorry, like a hot stove offseason where it's, well, we won 70 games, come and play with us. No, no, no. This is a
Yeah.
team who won 86 games, was a competitor and by all accounts the best team in baseball the second half of the season, and had a very strong and good playoff run. That fell a little bit short because they need some more impact players. So if I'm one of those impact players, and if the price is right, again, it comes back down to spending money. For the first time ever, the Detroit Tigers actually have a pitch to be like, hey, come and play with us,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're a pitcher. Because right now, and I want to get into Chris Fetter here in a second, what Chris Fetter, Robin Lund, Juan Nieves are doing with this entire pitching staff
Mm-hmm.
is remarkable. Now, I know you'll have some assholes out there like, well, what about Scooble? Gave up the pitch and your bullpen blew game 4 and yada, yada, yada. This team was so hell-bent and was so riding the backs of this pitching staff. That's why I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mad at them. That's why I'm not mad at the bullpen for coughing up game 4. That's why I'm not mad at Scooble for the pitch to Lane Thomas. Shit happens. You're going to throw a pitch, someone's going to hit it. They were so many times this season were strong and consistent and more than reliable. All for the record, pretty much in the second half, while only having 2 starting pitchers.
Yeah.
So any of these bullshit narratives that, pitching cost it late, coughed it up, and the real fans know that wasn't what it was. But for anyone who actually thinks, that's what really tanked the Tigers season, you're a moron. But if you're a pitcher coming in and you're looking to kind of rejuvenate your career or keep building on a good career that you've had or want to just keep going with, Detroit's a good place. Pitching is a premium here. We've got a hell of a pitching coach, and look at guys like Lorenzen. Look at guys like Jack Flaherty. Hell, Matthew Boyd. Look at him. Look
Yeah.
at him. I know he's only pitched in a small percentage of games in the second half for the Guardians, but once again, he's been pretty damn solid, kept the Tigers scoreless. So, it's a good problem to have. Now, speaking of things that might be potential problems, Chris Fetter. Are we nearing the point now where the Tigers are no longer the Tigers everyone looks at them like the little brothers? Like, this is a team now who is in the main spotlight of Major League Baseball. And with that comes teams who may want to poach not only your guys, but your coaches.
Yep.
Is there potential that we see Chris? I don't know what his contract is or anything like that, so I'm not sure where he's at there, just prefacing by saying this. But do we see a world where a Chris Fetter is getting poached this offseason or next season? And in general, I guess my question is, how much longer now that the Tigers are having success is A.J. Hinch going to be able to keep this coaching staff intact? Because pretty much for the most part, since A.J.'s gotten here in 2021, he's done that. His guys outside of hitting coaches have been the guys that have been here since he debuted in Detroit back in 21.
I mean, I am continued to be shocked every offseason when George Lombard doesn't get a manager job. I don't know about Chris Fetter because it just is, you don't hear about pitching coaches in the same way that you hear about bench coaches and managers,
right.
And potentially moving on, people wanting that guy. I don't know that. I just have to think that the Tigers would probably match any offer that Chris might get, and to keep him here. And I also don't know that he's particularly, like, he was at the University of Michigan before he before he came to the Tigers. He's a Michigan guy. Like, he is it's where he's had his entire professional life, really. So I don't know that. I think that there is going to be a sense of loyalty there. Now, if AJ left, would he go with AJ? Possibly. But I also don't know that. I don't think AJ's leaving until there's a World Series ring on his hand. And even then, I don't know that AJ's leaving.
I think AJ Hinch is going to be here for a very long time. I think one thing, I've always just said the one thing I nitpick with AJ, I wish he would be a little bit more emotional. The guy would be a hell of a poker player, because half the time I can't wonder what he's thinking because he shows no emotion. He's like a robot. But God, that man is smart. He is a fantastic manager. Al Avila didn't do a lot of things right, folks, but he did that one right. He absolutely did that one right by bringing in AJ Hinch to be the manager for the Tigers. One thing that I really love, and this kind of maybe coincides with what you were saying about Chris Fetter, AJ Hinch, you can tell he loves being a manager for the Detroit Tigers. And I think it's just a situation where both parties have benefited significantly from this. The Tigers got a brilliant and incredible World Series winning manager, and AJ Hinch got redemption. And I think it's just working. It's a beautiful marriage, so to speak. And I agree with you. I don't see him leaving for a very long time, or at least until the Tigers get a ring. And even if they get that ring, I still don't see him leaving. It's very rare these days that we get a lot of these managers who kind of, have these long stretches, right? Terry Francona just wrapped up his with Cleveland, but now it's back with Cincinnati.
Now he's back. He's back,
yeah, he's
baby.
back with it. He can't stop. He loves those Ohio teams, Terry does. Bochy, obviously, for many years with the Giants. Aaron Boone, is along right now with the Yankees. But
the worst manager in baseball.
Yeah. I have to think about who are the longest tenured managers in baseball right now. We'll get back to that. But what I'm getting at here is I think AJ Hinch is going to be on that list. He's going into season 5 now with the Tigers. Yeah. And I think he's a guy, I think he gets to double digits. I really do. I could be wrong. If this season sucks and we're back on that downward Tiger spiral in 2025, who knows? But I have a gut feeling this man loves the Detroit Tigers. He loves the city. He loves the fans. He loves the organization. And I think you might want to pack a lunch because he's going to be here for a while.
Yeah, and I think that extends to those primary assistants as well, like to George Lombard, to Chris Fetter. That I think about, Ben Johnson with the Detroit Lions, the offensive coordinator, who absolutely would have gotten a head coaching job in the NFL this season if he'd wanted one. And he pursued it and then said, no, you know what? We have unfinished business here in Detroit. And I think it is something about, we apologies to our listeners. We haven't heard the opening credits in a long time due to some technical things on our end. But there, you hear my voice in that say that Detroit is the best sports city. And I firmly believe that there is something about the town and that fan base that as a city has been kicked around for nearly its entire history as a city. Just recently, the population has begun to grow again in Detroit, but from the mid 50s until about the 20 teens, Detroit was a city on the decline population wise forever. It's a very blue collar town. It is the home of many, many people who punch in and out of work every day, and then they go cheer on their team. And if you come into that situation and you feel the embrace of that fan base, how can you not want to win them a championship? And then when you get close, when you get to this point, like, okay, we are back in the playoffs. We are like 5 at-bats and 4 pitches away from playing in the ALCS. How can you not be like, run it back? We're going to do it this time.
Yeah. Winning is contagious, and we got a nice little taste of that for the first time in a long time this season.
You're going to move to Arizona instead of do that? You're going to go to Tampa Bay where they don't even have a roof anymore?
They don't. Also, I don't know if you read
Oakland doesn't even play in Oakland anymore.
Yeah, no. Not only does Oakland not play in Oakland, Tampa Bay, they're in big trouble because they don't have a roof, and that means they don't have a stadium, and you can't play baseball outside in St. Petersburg in July and August because you'll die. So they got some issues. Also, speaking of longest tenured managers, Kevin Cash for the Tampa Bay Rays, and Dave Roberts for the LA Dodgers. So just had to close that book.
The Tampa Bay situation is very interesting. Not to turn this into a Rays Stadium podcast, but I was reading about the various issues that need to be resolved. One being that the Rays are building a new stadium that will open in 2028. A, do you want to spend the $30 million to re-put a roof on a stadium that you're going to close in 3 years anyway? B, if you wanted to play outside and just keep the roof off, they can't do that because the field doesn't have a drainage system.
Yep.
I saw I've seen so many great proposals for where they should go play.
I've seen 3. I've seen the George Steinbrenner Field where the Yankees do spring training. I don't think that's going to happen. I have a hard time seeing the Yankees let a division rival play their entire season at their minor league home turf. The Marlins, I have seen that one because they also play inside. Also, get excited for this one. These are all, hypotheticals. Disney's Wide World of Sports. ESPN, ESPN Disney Wide World of Sports. Yeah, I've seen that one as well being floated around. The problem is, like I said, you're going to run into not only heat issues in the middle of the summer, it rains every day here in Florida, especially in the summer.
Can't play a 3 o'clock game.
You definitely can't play. You're looking like most of your games have to be like 8 o'clock at night. They have to be. I don't. The funny thing is, I saw some people being like, "Well, it can't be at ESPN Wide World of Sports because like they only seat like 12,000 there." And it's like, folks, the Rays on a normal night, on a Saturday night, like unless like the Yankees are in town, are drawing like 7,000 people a game or whatever. Like it's probably a little bit more than that, but like it's not like it's Yankees Red Sox Friday night in Boston or New York where it's standing room only. Like, no, you guys have put a great good to great teams on your field for season after season, and you guys have never showed up, and now you're going to bitch and complain because, well, wait, we can't go to a smaller. You guys didn't care when you were good. Why are you going to care now that you don't even have a roof?
So, honestly, for a lot of actual Tampa Bay fans, it would probably be easier to get to Wide World of Sports in Orlando than it is to get to St. Petersburg. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, probably. I mean, yeah, probably. Yeah. And I've seen some people just being like, they're going to mess around and get the Rays sent to Montreal or relocated. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it may happen. I'm not
bring
sure,
back
but
the Expos, baby.
bring back the Expos. But look, as we wrap up this show, I just want to kind of bring it back to the Tigers. I just want to put a kind of pin on this to wrap it up. This season was so much fun. It was
Yeah.
so unexpected. It had so many legendary moments that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. Truly. From the Parker Meadows top 9, 2-out, 2-strike grand slam against the Padres to the Parker Meadows walk-off single against the Yankees in the Little League game, the Matt Vierling walk-off homer, the Gio Urshela walk-off homer, Kader Montero complete game 9-inning shutout against the Rockies. I mean, the Andy Ibanez go-ahead hit against the Stros, Kerry Carpenter against the Guardians, game 2. Legendary moments, Tarek Skubal Cy Young season. I mean, guy's the best pitcher in baseball, and it's not even a question. It was such an awesome honor to get to watch this, and I learned a lot about patience this season. So when I'm inevitably complaining that they get off when they're playing bad baseball second week of June, you remind me of the 2024 Detroit Tigers, and I will shut up as best as I can. It was at a point in time. I was like, I don't want to watch this anymore. Like, it's not even fun. And I say that every year, but like, I really felt it at some point, throughout the season. Like, this sucks. Like, what are we doing here? It's like nothing is ever getting better. We're just running in circles time and time again. And the last 2 months, 2.5 months, whatever it's been, just completely made me rethink about it all and just made me reappreciate how this can be so much fun when your team is actually competent and competitive. And I know winning cures everything. That's really all what it comes down to. The days they were winning, and that makes it better. But the team was just having more fun. You start to grow attached to guys and to moments, and it's a nice feeling to see your team win finally. And there's a lot more winning to be had. This book is not over yet. Check out for part 2. But man, what a great first chapter, so to speak, this was. And I look forward to continuing the novel next year.
Luke, I couldn't have said it better myself. And folks, we will be back throughout the off season, kind of on our normal schedule. So we'll probably next see you after the World Series is completed to do a little cut 'em or keep 'em. We'll bring the guys back on to review our season picks and how we did. And we'll once again not take that winner to dinner because that seems to be the real tradition. And folks, it's going to be a good time. Enjoy these feelings. And go Lions.
Oh no. Oh.